broke, that is completely run out of money. But we put that on the side. Again, we listened to the Deputy President, Rigathi Gachagwa's interview, and then he also said the same thing, that this government is completely broke. So you gotta wait then for them to try and correct a couple of things here and there for us to start having that money. But then when you look at the headlines for KRA, KRA has been collecting above its limit. In fact, if you go to August, they give us the number at 120 billion as the money that they collected, which was way beyond their target by a couple of billions. All right, so yesterday, they announced the subsidy, 3.6 billion, that is essentially supposed to be released, meaning there was some 3.6 billion somewhere that was supposed to be utilized for this particular function. And this question for the government, in fact, if you go right now on Google and type, Kenyan government is broke, you'll go back to 5 years ago. You'll find headlines of us, the media, trying to understand if indeed the government is broke. That's the question. Is the government broke? And to help us then go into this conversation, we are joined by senior analyst, Saitama Investments, Stella Swake. Stella, how are you doing?
I'm doing good.
Happy to have you around.
Thanks for having me.
Let's begin. I mean, that's the question that everybody is looking at. When you're looking at how the government spends its money, 93 million as of Saturday, if indeed we are going by that as a fact, is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, I'd just start by saying that the 93 million was an improvement from what was left in July.
Hold on. You gotta take it back. 93 million shillings was an improvement.
Yeah, because as of 29th July, as per the exchequer that was released by the Treasury, we had 70 million in the Treasury. And that again was a great deterioration from the 600 million that was there in June, as of June 30th. So this has been we have been in millions for the last 3 months, August, July, and June. Then, as you've said, when you go to social media, this was like in 6 years back, and the lowest we have gone in the recent period is around 2.4 billion. So, but then we were surviving. We survived June, we survived July, we survived August. I'm not saying it's a good thing, but it clearly shows how much we rely on debt.
Yes.
Because if you look at the prorated targets, that is the target for each month as per the budget that was given to us by the Treasury, we have been lagging behind at around 42, as in below 50% in borrowing, our borrowing target.
Yes.
Noting that this has been, like we really rely on debt. We had collected enough revenues in the past financial year, but coming into financial year 2022-2023, we began at a low base. The revenues we collect for each month are lower than the targets, and we can always attribute this to the deteriorated environment because, again, on the ground, people are saying there is no business, business is low, business is deteriorating, and this one will definitely translate to the revenues that are collected by the KRA.
Yes.
So then, this points takes us back to the point that I've stated, that we overly rely on debt as a country, meaning if we don't borrow, then our revenues will not sustain us, our domestic financing will not sustain us. We have to borrow externally, we have to borrow internally. And given the rising of the yields, we had a hike in yields from as low as 4% for the 2024 bond to 15%.
Yes.
So again, the government was not that desperate to borrow money at these high rates, because in this case, they played motherly in terms of looking out for the future. So they cut down, or they toned down on borrowing, and we will just say that this is what is taking us to the millions levels
that we did find Saturday last week. Fine. So let's take it back a bit. Stella, when you say that we've been in millions for the last 3 months, how bad is that? That you're running a country, and if you go back to your coffers, you only have millions that you're surviving with.
Yeah, we've become, I mean, the government is now surviving the way Kenyans survive, most Kenyans survive,
so
hand to mouth.
Hold on to you. So we're waiting for KRA to give us some money.
We get money, we spend. We get money, we spend. Because looking at the opening balances, this is not something that can sustain us as a country for even a month, the 93 million. Looking at the expenditures that we have, looking at what is disbursed to the counties. And just to note, for the month of July, the funds that were disbursed to the counties was around 7 billion, as opposed to 22 billion in the first month of the current fiscal year. So looking at this, we get to see that most things or most operations in the county levels will lag behind, because you see, you can't compare 22 billion with 7 billion. So then this is
it's a tough situation.
Yeah, it's
isn't
a tough situation.
When you're looking at it from that perspective. Okay, let's go back a bit. When we're talking about Kenya relying on that, because indeed, you like to think that if our revenue collection then has been at par, going by the headlines that we've been seeing from Treasury in terms of the way KRA has been performing, then you like to think that Kenya, being known as a country that has been surviving on debt, that we could be getting this debt. But then, why were we priced out of our July bond? Would you, to anybody listening to you, why were we priced out of the July bond?
Well, I have mentioned that the government played motherly in terms of looking out for the future.
Yes.
And the main reason was because of the rising yields, because this would have meant that in the future, we will have to pay more money in interest as opposed to what we would have paid if we waited.
Yes.
Because we've seen the yields start declining since the swearing in of the president, a peaceful electioneering period. So it was a wait and see approach, and this might be a commendable thing for the government to do by looking out for the future. So that is the elephant in the room in Kenya. It's the cause of so many problems. For example, we look at the exchequer issues for the last month.
Yes.
59% went to debt servicing. Meaning, for every 1 shilling that we got, or the government got from revenue, 59 shillings went to debt servicing, leaving all the rest of the expenditure to the remaining less than 50%. So we can see how debt is weighing so much on the country's expenditure.
Yes.
And this would we might appreciate later, not now, because for now, I wouldn't say we are suffering as a country, but the business environment is so difficult, it's so subdued, so we might appreciate in the future what the government did in terms of sheltering us from high debt servicing costs which might be, or will be paid by other generations that didn't even use the money. Yeah.
So now we did get the announcement that once again we did see how the government was really looking at the interest rates right now, especially when we're talking about external market. We do know that in Europe rates are all jumping up. In fact, every day you wake up, you hear, well, they've called for another meeting to hike their interest rates. But then they did say, Stella, for anybody listening, I'm trying to make this conversation as simple as it can get for somebody to understand how broke we are. But the government knows very well that they've got to look for sources of debt because that has been provided in our budget. We do know that we got to borrow close to 1 trillion just to come in and fill our gaps. But then when you say, I'm not going for this bond, or I've been priced out of this bond, then what becomes of your plans locally? One, they didn't announce that they're going now for bank loans as a government just to try in and fill those gaps. Is that working out for the government? And if it's working out, And we do know, well, they gotta borrow this money. Why we not seen it?
Yeah, so one thing with borrowing from banks,
yes,
we always say it will crowd out the private sector.
But we've seen a government that doesn't care.
Yeah.
But at this point, would you care? Because you only have 63 million at a particular, and you're waiting for KRA to give you more money. So,
yeah, KRA, you are waiting for KRA to give you more money.
yes,
Yet the business environment
is not also subdued, isn't it, as
yeah.
you're saying?
So, at this rate, I feel like Kenyans will have to trust the process, because the government is just left with, as we are saying, the banks,
yes,
and concessional loans, for example, from World Bank and IMF.
Mm-hmm.
So we now put the bond aside, and we are left with only these two cases. Wouldn't Kenyans understand? Which other choice do they have?
Hold on. Now, Stella, the only way that we can understand is this. Number one, we've seen a government now that would then rely on these concessional loans, fine. But then look at what World Bank is pushing for. Look at what IMF is pushing for. IMF, by October, we don't know how things are going to look by October, going by these numbers that we're seeing at Treasury then. They want the fuel subsidy cut. They've already cut the power subsidy. That is gone and dusted. Nobody's even talking about it, by the way. I wonder why nobody's talking about it. Because if you're talking about production, you've got to talk about the cost of power in this country. Good. Then World Bank is also saying, well, you've got to fleece public hiring.
Yeah.
This government that is coming in, do you think that indeed you're telling Kenyans that we're going to manage it, and the only management that we've seen, Stella, is cutting off subsidies? But they have to borrow, don't they?
They do.
Yes.
Well, we have always said as analysts that the fuel subsidy was not sustainable. We still will say the same thing. The government cannot sustain fuel subsidy. As of this morning, there was news that the fuel subsidy that has been used so far is around
81 billion, yes.
Yeah, 81 billion.
Money. Yes.
We have 93 billion in the treasury. How then is the subsidy sustainable? So we have to look at the, if at all we have to push or prop economic growth and easy business environment, we'll have to look at the production level.
Yes.
I agree, fuel is one of the major input in production.
Could you call it the most important in this country? I mean, we're a fuel-driven economy.
Yeah. Yes. Fuel, electricity.
Yes.
And if then we use the money that we have to put subsidy on fuel, then how are we helping these other sectors of the economy that bring money into the economy? We have agriculture as the main, as the main economic activity in the country. What are we doing to support agriculture to complement the other sectors of the economy? Where are we going to get this money to put subsidy on fuel when we are not supporting the other sectors of the economy? So if we look at it from that particular point of view, then we will see that this fuel subsidy was not sustainable, and we would understand. Not on any political view, this one is saying put the subsidy, this one is saying no, don't put the subsidy. Yes, we benefited, but for how long? For how long are we going to benefit from the subsidy? It's just a matter of time. We don't have money to put subsidy on fuel. We don't have money to put subsidy on unga. We don't have money to do other things to finance the expenditures of the government. How will it help? Well, let's put this amount of money we are putting on subsidy, let's put it on other factors, other sectors of the economy.
Yes.
Then these sectors will help and complement the other sectors, and we will get enough money. Then as production continues, and there will be more money in the market.
You would like to think, isn't it?
Yeah.
Once you've made everything in the economy
exactly.
tick. Yes.
Yeah, complement everything with it. We can't focus on one problem and put a blind eye on the rest of the problems. We have many problems as a country.
Yes.
And the major problem, as we've said, the elephant in the room is debt. How then, when we don't have money, we just go to debt. So we finance we will end up financing the subsidy using debt, which is the problem. Are we helping, or what are we doing?
So other ways that Kenyans then, Stella, will look at exactly what is going on. It's a government that is really trying to think, what can we do? And if we go back to the president's address in his inauguration, he actually did say, we have to collect our tax for us to survive. And that has been an ongoing conversation. Now, let me tell you what we've seen from Kenya. Some inflation adjustments that were actually deemed unconstitutional in the 12th parliament. Guys looked at it and said, well, we're in COVID, you just can't come in and do inflation adjustments on everything in the country when the country is trying to recover. That was taken out. And immediate former President Uhuru Kenyatta was quite vocal on this. They said, you guys will come look for me. In fact, in the first 1 or 2 weeks after the new president is taken over. Now, let's see what has happened. Even as Kenyans are complaining about the high cost of fuel, it's bound to go up a bit high again from 1st of October. Yeah. Even the cost of production, because it's touching on energy, it's touching on basic commodities. In fact, those commodities that majority of Kenyans are spending on. Is this a government, if you're saying that you're broke, you got to collect this and you can't avoid it, Stella, and it looks as if they're not going to avoid it. So what is the solution? The solution is to collect more? Is that what it's going to be?
Well...
Find ways to collect more.
Yeah. But then, where are you collecting?
Yes, but at the time, Stella, at a time we were saying that Kenya is doing better than we've ever seen it do before. I mean, they're talking about 2 trillion in terms of collections. You like to think, okay, hold on, it can be about collecting.
Yeah. Who? So,
yes,
2021 was a recovery year. So many businesses recorded profits.
Yes.
We were happy, things were going well, but then Russia decided to sabotage everything, and there were the already existing supply constraints that made even things more worse in terms of price of fuel, other commodities that net importing countries import.
Yes.
Then we look at things like the local currency depreciation. All these factors compounded came into 2022. Now, we are seeing that the revenues collected, as I had said, for the current fiscal year, we are not meeting the target. For the last 2 months, the first 2 months of the current fiscal year, we've been below 100%, which means we are not hitting the target of what we ought to collect every month. So I am assuming the government feels that inflation doesn't affect us, it affects its expenditures alone, because they want to push these inflation adjustments to Kenyans every now and then, yet we are suffering. We are still suffering. They are assuming we are in a different country. We are enjoying everything. We are enjoying profits. Yeah. So they adjust the inflation to get money or to get financing for the expenditure. As we've always said, we just want the government to look at the expenditures. Let's plan for what we can afford. Because you were saying we ought to borrow around 1 trillion. But that's external and domestic debt. We have not factored in the repayment of the bonds that we have collected or we have issued before, the treasury bills. And the amounts also go up to around 800 and something million. So it adds on to the debt. The key point is, let's stick to an expenditure that we can be able to finance.
Yes.
Let's avoid pushing consumers. We are pushing the consumers who are already suffering in inflation. All of us, you remember the last time we were here, we were talking about inflation, and you were saying whatever is on the ground does not reflect on the numbers.
Reflect the numbers, really.
So pushing more on the consumers feels like they think the government thinks we are in a different country, surviving, we have enough money, we have more than enough, so they want to still get some from it.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't think it's, not that we are removing the subsidy from fuel, it will be best if we at least cut some of the taxes. Because if you look at what taxes are taxed on fuel, they amount to around 9 types of taxes. This one wants this type of tax. This one wants to tax this type of tax. If we ought to mind the consumer.
Yes.
Cut down some of the taxes, remove the subsidy, not put a subsidy and add taxes.
Yes.
Because it's like you're giving us subsidy, then you add tax. It's like we are financing the subsidy that you're giving us. Yeah.
So lastly, therefore, Stella, somebody's going to ask you the question then. I mean, if all factors then put together, it's a government that is already saying we are broke, but they're saying give us time, we want to fix it. If indeed you're getting priced out of bonds, you're looking around, Kerry's telling you, well, our collections are not up to par, and you're here with the promises that you really want to fix this country at a time when you have even issues on imported inflation, something you can't control yourself right now. Do you think it becomes a far stretch for you to actually get to achieve it quickly as we clear?
Yeah, so as the incoming regime said, they are taking charge of a country that is wounded, which is to some extent true. We have so many things we have to fix as a country.
Yes.
We have an expenditure to look at, we have a debt to tone down, we have so many things. We have a cost of living to tone down to ensure that consumers or the Kenyan citizens live in a friendly environment. We have a business environment to prop up. It's a bit of a stretch for them, but we put faith in them as we recommend. All analysts countrywide are recommending this and this and this. Yeah, we believe it's a stretch, and we give them a benefit of doubt, hoping that they will
benefit
perform.
Of doubt.
Yeah.
It's been confirmed. Stella says, I mean, for months, that account has been in millions. You gotta go back 3 months when you gotta find it was in millions as opposed to billions. If you go back, it's supposed to be in billions. That's a healthy balance. But then she's saying, well, it's been in millions that we've been surviving. For how long are we going to do that? But she says, give them time. They said, oh, fix it. Let's hope that the plan they're putting in place then will get them out of the red in which this particular economy is in. Stella, thank you very much for coming by. Always a pleasure to host you.
Thanks for having me.
All right, want to take her back to the time that she came online and Lookuptv across all your social media platforms. I am at Kiage Simba. Let's meet tomorrow when we talk about NSSF as well. It's causing headlines. See ya.
This is an ordinary day in Hilary's life.
I was called by someone who represented himself to me as a husband to her. And the guy told me that she has died on 18th April.